Good evening. Welcome to my channel. My name is David Okun. I'm talking about the European Union, a political system set to govern member states within Europe, also non-member states, and we were looking at the institutions of the European Union. We have been linking this to the cost of living, which has been a topic pursued for the entirety of this program. And the essence of this connection between the European Union and the cost of living surrounds the economic system of capitalism, which I also spoke about a few weeks and months ago in the other videos. And I've stated there that capitalism, as we practice it today as nations of the world, especially here in Britain and also in the Western world, the kind of capitalism we practice now has to do with privatization of the economy, and that is why the government no longer is funding the public sector, and failure of the government, British government, and the government of the West and the government of the globe failing consistently to finance the public sector has led to income failure also, especially for those who work for a living, the 90% in Britain and around the world, people who are estimatedly excluded from the wealth of the nations of the world. And this is actually the essence of discussing this topic in the sense that when there is a problem such as the cost of living, people need to understand what is causing it so that they have to think how to solve problems. The problem of the cost of living is a crisis. The cost of living as a crisis may slow down or actually stop. I don't see it stopping anytime soon, but I believe that the cost of living will always be there, affecting people who are on low income, people who are working for a living. And the problem of work in the modern economic system of capitalism and the market system is that industries and employers pay workers very low. So because they are paid low and because the government do not support low income within the employment policy or within the social welfare policy, and there is a lot of pressure on people who work for a living who are actually on low income. There are some workers who are actually of the middle class who earn good money, and they may not really experience the cost of living necessarily, but it is going to be harder for them to meet other expenses within housing if they are buying on a mortgage, if they're actually borrowing credit to buy a housing, or if they are borrowing to finance their furniture in the house, if they're using credit cards. So they are going to feel the effect of the cost of living here in the UK and around the world in Europe. The problem in inflation is actually making the cost of living worse, not better. And every attempt by the Bank of England and other financial institutions to control inflation by uh, managing the interest rate. Inflation is caused by excessive supply of money in the economy. Now, the problem with the supply of money is that uh, although first of all, supply of money comes when people spend money to buy goods and services, products like food, energy, transportation, healthcare, vehicles, buying houses. When people actually shop, it affects the supply of money. Money supply actually, if it actually passes a certain threshold, then it creates inflation. Now, if inflation occurs, the cost of product goods and services will go up, and that's how the basics, and also maybe generally things which we need, they will be more expensive. And this is now happening in the UK today. Inflation has gone up, and that means food prices are going up, energy prices are going up, and I don't see that stopping. And I also don't see the government helping anyone, because the government is unable to run the country in Britain, in Europe, and across the globe. In the sense that the factor now running the government is actually the market economy, the market system. Because the government has given power, all the power they need to run the country, to big businesses, which actually control the market. The market controls capitalism, is actually driving capitalism, which now run the economy. The government cannot make independent decisions, even if we elect them, because they they cannot really. They have. I mean, the government has to do what the market wants. Basically, that's the basis. The government does not do what the British people, or the people of Europe or of the world want. They do what the market tells them to do. The government say, if the market says we want you to manage inflation, the government has to do that. If the government says we want you to, the market says inject more money into the economy, the market does that. And every time the government spends in the economy, the government is spending to build capital. And this money, capital, goes to the super rich, the few, and not to the many. And when the government wants to control inflation, they ask to reduce public spending. And public spending actually affect the poor, the poor who are many, and it doesn't affect the few. Part of government behavior with public spending is responsible for the cost of living. As a crisis, significant. It's the primary cause of the cost of living. And the government cannot spend money on the poor people of the world, because the poor people of the world has to get money via employment, and the government cannot invest in employment uh, because the market doesn't want the government to do that. The interest of the market is actually to build wealth for the many, for the few, and not for the many. And the super rich also get richer when the government spends money, and the poor get poorer when government spends money, because the government doesn't spend money on the poor people. Poor people are responsible partly for inflation because there are many, and they spend money on energy and food mostly, and on transport as well. Apart from that, the group of people, about 10% of the population who are super rich, are the ones who spend the wealth of the world. They spend wealth like water, like there is no tomorrow, because they have so much money. They can buy anything they want with a lot of money, and they are actually responsible for inflation. But the government always, when inflation occurs, they give more money to the rich and take money away from the poor. So the social injustice is at a crisis level. People need to be aware that they are on their own and they have to survive. If you don't learn how to be responsible for your life, you're going to die of poverty, even if you're in a rich country, because of the system. This system is actually going global. Like I said it before, it's going to Africa, it's going everywhere. So people who do not, the 90% potentially are going to start dying because of stress, because of poor nutrition, because of sickness. If you're sick and you're going to the hospital now, the hospital do not want people who are on government support. I mean, if you can pay for your health care, then they want you. If you can't afford to pay because you're low pay, you're on minimum wage, even if you're working, you're not going to be registered with any GP, only hospital. You're not going to be registered with dentists, and that's happening now. They don't tell you that, But they keep saying they're full up. They're full. They don't register. They will ask you, do you pay for your treatment? If you say yes, we are not taking people who don't pay for their treatment at the moment. So they are not registering people. If you are registered, you have to wait and wait and wait. If you want to book an appointment with the doctor, you don't get appointment with the doctor at all. Because what happened is that when you phone to say you want an appointment with the doctor, they will tell you the appointment is full. And if you say, can you book me for another day? They say, no, call tomorrow. When you call the following day, you will stay on the queue for nearly an hour. If you're lucky, you will be answered about 30 minutes, 40 minutes, queuing on the line, and you will be paying for that phone. It's not free line. Now, if you're poor and you cannot afford the cost of telephone, you are not going to use the NHS, the National Health Service. Literally, you're going to die if you're sick, if you don't have a telephone. And also, more and more now, in all the public sector institutions, if you cannot get internet, which also costs a lot of money, the internet is also costing a lot of money. And if you don't have access to the internet, and also if you don't know how to use internet, you're going to be excluded from social services and all the public services. You're going to be excluded. You're going to be in serious trouble. You don't have money. You don't have access to food. You don't have access to energy because food is so expensive. Energy is so expensive. Transport is so expensive. And the government is blocking all the options, all the route. The government will say we are giving help to people, but in practice, you cannot get help. Right now, within the local authorities, you phone them, they don't answer the phone. You go online, you may chat with them. They will book you an appointment, and you have to wait and wait and wait. Housing, welfare benefit, employment is not there anymore because the computer is taking over employment. What used to be done by maybe 1,000 people, one person can do it on the computer. So if you're lucky, employment is now like a lottery, and it's going to be more and more. Although public report says that the employment is low, that is not true. It's false, because the kind of employment people do cannot actually support their livelihood. People are doing 3 to 4, sometimes to 5 jobs. They are odd jobs. They are actually jobs people are not people are qualified. People who are qualified do work which they are not qualified. I mean, they don't get the work they are qualified to do. I mean, even sweeping the street is being swept by trucks. There are rubbish collectors. But even that, maybe in the future, is going to be collected by robots or automated vehicles or autonomous vehicles. So, the future of employment is disappearing because of technology and also scientific development, which is supposed to be good, but unless the government learned to govern peacefully, and now there's a lot of violence because the government doesn't care about anyone, and also poor people don't care about each other anymore. People are now living like animals. They call themselves strangers. So it's not like the rich, something's wrong with them. Yes, there is something wrong with them, but it is exactly the same like poor people. Because the society is divided between the rich and the poor. So people need to really change the way they behave. Even if you're rich, I mean, if they are rich, I mean, the rich is going to live longer. The poor, we who are the majority, are going to die if we don't change the way we behave. If you're poor, you have to really behave well. You have to respect yourself, respect other people, start living with other people peacefully. Live a better life than somebody who is wealthy, because they have money. You don't. You need each other. If you're poor, you need society. You need a community. They don't. More and more, the super rich are going to be depending on machines. The poor people cannot access machines, so they will be excluded. They have to survive. There are many, and they have to live with each other. But the government and the legal system and the way society is operating is dividing people. If you're divided, you're going to be extinct. If you're poor and divided, you don't really want to live with one another. You call each other strangers. You live like wild animals. Wild animals are even better than you because you call each other strangers. And you are strangers because you are danger. To other people, people are actually very dangerous. In this country, they are very dangerous in wherever they live. Even in Africa now, people run away. You are afraid of a human being first, other than a wild animal. And we don't like to see that. We don't want to tell the truth. We are going to die. If we don't change the way we behave, we are going to go extinct as a species. Beginning with the poor, the rich will also go extinct because they will continue to fight even if they are rich because they are bad people. See, people don't believe that they are bad people. We are bad people. We are very, very bad. If we call each other strangers, we are not good people. So it is the responsibility of poor people and the rich. If we want to survive, we have to become good people. We have to change the way we think about ourselves, valuing ourselves and valuing other people. Because if you value your life and you value other people, your behavior will change. It's the way you think, your mental attitude, the way you think. And I've been saying this over and again. Because, you see, we are in a catch-22 situation. The rich think they are good, and the poor also think they are good. Yes, we are good. But we need to start living like human beings. We can no longer afford to live like wild animals, which is what we are now behaving as. Because we have no respect for ourselves. We have no respect for other people at all. You see? And that's why people do not, I mean, if you disrespect is evidence of not valuing your life. And children are being murdered on the street, being shot. You cannot shoot another child. If you are a child, you cannot shoot another child if you respect yourself. If you respect that child, you will not kill another person. Okay? People are fighting. Americans are now sending firearms to Ukraine. They are building system of war. You see, the globe is preparing for war. They're not preparing for peace. How can you build peace? By manufacturing war. Biological warfare, weapons, viruses, bacteria, which kills people, which infect people, diseases, being used as weapons of mass destruction. Maybe, who knows, maybe the climate is also being used. Extreme rainfall, extreme weather, extreme climate. Who knows? Because the government operate in a secret. We do not know what they're doing with the world. Maybe the extreme weather, extreme cold, extreme heat, extreme storm, maybe it's being created, tsunamis, maybe it is created deliberately as a weapon of violence. Because, there are a group of people who are running the world who believe that violence and force is a solution, is bringing peace. It doesn't. These people have a lot of power, but they are totally mistaken. They are very, very wrong. And so are we, who are not in power, because we are also behaving like them. So this is a humanitarian problem. It's a humanitarian crisis. We cannot blame anybody. We point out position of responsibility. Those in power are actually more responsible. The government is responsible for running Britain and other countries where governments are across the world, it cannot tell citizens to be responsible for their life. The citizens under democracy have handed over power to the government to run the country. The government is responsible. We are not. You are not responsible for anything in this country because you gave power to the government to run the country. You don't have land. You cannot grow your own food. You cannot build your own house because you give your land to government. The government gave your land to the rich. So the rich and the government should look after you. They should grow free food for everyone, for every person who works for a living. In my opinion, if you earn from, in Britain, if you earn from £100,000 and less, you should buy food. People who are rich should pay to produce food. There are machines to produce food. Nobody should go hungry. Children are now going hungry in Britain, in schools, because the government doesn't want to look after children. They don't want to look after parents. Parents cannot afford food for themselves and for their children. Parents are actually living in overcrowded accommodation and dangerous accommodation which can catch fire. It can actually produce poison, toxic poison. Poor people are now dying in houses not fit for purpose. And that is the government negligence. But the government is actually mistaken to think the British people are responsible. No, the British people are not responsible for housing. They are not responsible for employment. They are not responsible for income. They are not responsible for their security and for healthcare. They are not responsible for anything because they depend on the government. The government is running the country using the wealth of the nation. Okay? So it is a piece of violence every time the government neglects the British people in Britain. In France, the French, talk about the European Union, communities of member states. If they are negligence, they are negligence because they are violent. They are wrong. And we are also wrong. We who are actually victims of the state, we are also wrong. The citizens are also wrong because we chose violence over peace. Why are we calling each other strangers? That's the evidence. We call each other strangers. You don't talk to people on the street because they are strangers. And if you insist on making friends on the street, you'll probably be killed. It is a decision we make as human beings. We made that decision to be a terror to society. It has to change. I'm actually making this statement because I believe people can change. We can change from being fools and violent people into becoming peaceful people and sensible people. We become good neighbors. Not by show or by lips, but by act. Action speaking louder. Actions speak louder. We cannot pretend, we keep pretending that things are okay. Things are not okay. We have to say no to something, to wrong. If something is wrong, let us say no to it. Now, because we are running out of time. We, the poor people, and we, the rich people of society, wealth and poverty is real. But wealth or poverty is not our ruler. We are actually our own masters and mistresses, if you like. We are supposed to be independent, but we have to have enlightenment. We have to be educated. It is our responsibility as poor people, as rich people, as society. We cannot have an excuse that the government has power, so they are responsible and we are not. We are responsible to be good people. To learn to respect ourselves and to respect other people. If we respect other people, we don't call them strangers. We don't attack them on the street. We don't get attacked by knife or anything. Now, every little argument on the street can trigger a lot of incidents. People do not have respect for each other. They talk, they're rude, they're violent. At the same time, they pretend to be nice and polite. How can you be nice when you are actually strangers? You don't look after each other. Uh, Somebody, your neighbor, can die alone in the house. They can stay in the house for months, dead, and their neighbor wouldn't know. And this is real. It's happening in Britain. It's happening across the world, in Europe, especially in the developed countries, because people are actually divided. The state actually has taught us to be divided. Because I say the state because it's responsible for our cultural and development. For our culture and our development, it is the responsibility of the state because we gave them the power. But once we see that they are actually reneging on their duties, we are responsible ultimately for our life because this is now a jungle. There is lawlessness. You see, there is no control. The government is under control. So are we. And it must change. The government can change if you want, but the plight of the government is the same with us because there are people there running the country using a system. The people need to change. The system may or may not be good, but we created those systems. And they are very violent systems. They have always been violent. If you study history, the history of the world is so dirty, it's so bad that we no longer teach it in school. And, don't waste your time reading history because they are oral stories. Think about what we can do from now going forward. I'm saying this, hoping somebody is going to listen. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, if you like what I'm saying, subscribe. If you don't like it, also subscribe because you might change your life, your mind later on. And if you subscribe, you'll be supporting this channel. And the more you support it, the more I have gained capability of actually using it. And if you don't like what you hear, you can participate elsewhere, but make sure you do something with your life. And that's the message I'm actually putting across. This is an opportunity to me to say what I think is right. Because if we speak what is right and actually do what is right, then we begin to bring changes in our lives. Because if you think you're suffering, then start to think. You cannot give up on your life. If you're suffering, I know everybody is suffering because I speak to people in different ways. Like family, friends, and also strangers, I speak to people. People are suffering. And we can sit here and blame the government. We can sit here and blame somebody else. Or even blame ourselves. That is not what I want. Don't blame. Well, you can blame yourself if you want. But don't sit there blaming yourself. You know the problem. You are not alone. We are all in this together. You have to take your responsibility. Change the way you think. And take responsibility. Learn what you can. You cannot do everything. Learn what you can. Work as hard as you can. Play as hard as you can. But let us start a process of transformation, of changing our lives, of getting out of poverty, and hopefully getting into wealth. That is the first step. And then all the other things we begin to think about. Because the question of poverty and the cost of living is an emergency. It's a priority number one. We need to manage the cost of living first. But I'm also trying to talk broadly into now and future. Because once you are out of a crisis, you need to rebuild your life financially and in other ways also, because that is the source of your wealth and your health. Your wealth comes from your money. Your health comes from your mindset. You begin to think differently. You think respect, and respect yourself and other people. I've been saying this because I believe in it. I believe that if I respect you, I'm not going to really swear at you. I'm not going to punch your face. I'm not going to hurt you because I have respect for you. I mean, only pervert, people who are really, really psychopaths, who are totally mad, will punch their best friends and call them, oh my friend, sorry about that. I punched your face, I broke your teeth. You are my best friend. Rubbish. If you have a friend who abuses you physically or verbally or emotionally, leave. They are not your friend. Those are psychopaths. They are mad people. They are insane, totally lunatics. Associate with people who are actually positive, who are progressive, who is the first sign of making a friend or even anything at all, any relationship, respect. The reason I'm actually talking, because I have hope. If people change their mind, and people are able to change the way they think, they can respect themselves and respect other people and begin to behave peacefully. And then we can sow a human seed able to produce peace and peaceful relationship. We can begin to challenge the government officials. When I say the government, I mean the people who run the government. Because the government is a dead product unless people actually participate in it. So the people who are actually in government are incapable because of disrespect. They are very wealthy, they are very clever, but they're just disrespectful because, like us, they're as disrespectful as we are because they are uneducated. They don't know how to live peacefully. You see, they think they're brilliant. We also think we are brilliant. Yes, we are. But we need specific change. We need to really start living peacefully. We have to start living peacefully. We have to build peaceful relationship. Otherwise, the cost of living is just a sign. We deal with it as an emergency. But I will be talking about the cost of living as an emergency, and also providing information how you can get help from wherever help might be in Britain. But also, if we can get help in Britain, you can get help in Europe. You can get help in other countries. But I said it in the other video about the European Union because they give foreign aid to Africa, and I don't see why they should not give help to African government, and I don't see why African government and their NGOs in their European countries should now be in Africa as providing food and water to everyone who is suffering the cost of living, because the cost of living is in Africa, and helping Africans to cultivate, giving technical support like tractors, like seeds. They should support Africa. Africa has land. Why is the European government not supporting African farmers? African families who have land. They have land in Africa. And they can't cultivate it because they don't have money to invest in the land. They could be growing their food, their own food in Africa. Africans could be growing their own food. And they would also be producing their own energy. They have firewoods. They have, like in Africa, the sun is almost 24/7. The solar panel alone could solve the problem of energy crisis in Africa overnight. Sahara Desert could contain a solar farm. The European powers, the Chinese, the Russians can build solar panels up and down the continent of Africa to solve the energy crisis overnight. Why are they not doing it? Because they are dumb. Why are African leaders not leading properly in Africa? Because African leaders are dumb. Why are African people not really working together to unite as people? Even if the government is not helping them, if the Europeans are not helping them, Africans are divided because they are dumb. Because they don't think right. And this is what I'm talking about. Sometimes we need to change the way we think in Africa and start working together, unity. And the same in the developed world, where we are excluded under capitalism. We can bring changes. I mean, capitalism is good to produce wealth and power. We may or may not need power necessarily because we are powerful enough. We don't need more power unless we want it to fight, which is what we are using power for, to fight and get more wealth and get more power. We call it security procedures. We are building military system, method of fighting, method of violence. We are actually expert of violence. Number one priority of rule is actually to prosecute violence to the utmost. We have seen in Russia and Ukraine. Russia and Ukraine incident being one of the major factors creating the cost of living as a crisis. We see these things, and I want us to talk about it. If you don't want to talk about it, it's fine. If you don't want to listen to this video, okay, I will continue to speak as long as I'm able. And what I say is important because if people listen to it, it will actually open their minds, open their eyes, because this is common sense. We need to really behave. We need to behave peacefully. We need to actually work together. We need to solve our own problem. We have to be friends. The reason you are happy, because you have a friend. If you are sad, right now, if I'm talking to you and you are like really, really sad, it means you don't have a genuine friend. The moment, as soon as you get a genuine friend, the next minute, you're going to be happy. Friendship is the primary source of happiness. If you want to succeed, work hard. There are young people and old people who think they are going to get free money. There is no such thing as free money or free wealth or free anything. You have to work for everything. The problem, if you work and it is taxed by the government, and also it is taxed indirectly by you having to spend a lot of money on food and energy and on healthcare, on bills, why should you pay for rent? In a country like Britain, America, or even in China, these are very wealthy nations. They should build houses for free for people who cannot afford to buy. The moment you cannot afford a mortgage, I mean, you don't even need a mortgage in a wealthy world like we live in. You don't need that. You don't need to buy a house at all. You don't need to pay rent. The government should build houses for people who cannot afford to buy it cash. And the rest of the world should buy houses cash. If they want to borrow money, let them borrow money. But in a country like Britain, you don't need to borrow any money because there is money everywhere. Why should you be borrowing money? Use cash. Buy a house. And give some of the money to the government to build houses for free. They don't have to pay any rent. If they're working or if they're not working, the same. The houses should be given to them permanently. That is housing. And also food. Nobody working for a living who is earning the minimum wage should actually pay for any food at all or drink. We have to buy water. We have to pay for water in the house. And the water in the house is not clean. More and more we are discovering that the water is killing us. The water is actually polluted. The water coming into our kitchens are not good for drinking. So we try to minimize the risk by using the house, the kitchen water to cook. We have to go to the supermarket and buy. That is taxation. Whether we pay for bills in the house, whether we buy from the supermarket, it's a form of state taxation. We as a country should produce food for free for every citizen who cannot afford it. And the definition of affordability should be actually produced by the people, not by the state, unless the state can actually define affordability in a way where people who don't need to buy food don't buy food. But right now, the government has set up a very complicated system of welfare state, which is not necessary. Welfare state as a system should be shut down completely. What the government should be doing is actually to invest directly into the economy for specifics like food, energy, housing, health. Nobody working earning less than 30,000, 50,000 pounds should pay for their health care. They shouldn't. Those who are actually rich, who do not know what to do with their money, should give money to the state, including the royal family, who are so rich they don't even know. I mean, the kind of wealth the royal family has. I'm envious. That is fine. I'm not really against people getting wealth, but please, are you crazy? I mean, the basic like housing. We people live in housing, but they are so stressful. They're so stressed because they have to. Right now, people face eviction from their homes all the time, and the government is sending people to live in concentration camps, churches, a library, public, public library. I mean, those are concentration camps. I mean, are we prisoners? I mean, these people are supposed to be citizens. Are they prisoners? Why do you send them into the library to live there? Why do you do that? If you're a government, if you're a sensible government, why do you ask people to go and live in the library because they cannot afford energy? You have no shame. If you are a prime minister, you are the chancellor, you're asking British people to go and stay in the library because they cannot afford the cost of energy. Are you crazy? Energy is not supposed to be paid for. If you did not privatize the energy service and the product, we will not be in this position because the government will be running it directly. This is actually necessity, basic necessity. Why did you sell it off? Are you crazy? Why did you sell a supermarket? The government should run supermarket. People should get free food from there. They should get free energy. They should access free water. It is actually a form of evil to sell food in a world swimming in wealth. You don't need to have wealth to know Britain is rich, America is rich, Europe is rich, Russia. And what are you using the money for? To fight in Ukraine, and the poor are being murdered by the state in Russia and Ukraine. Why is Ukraine fighting Russia? The simple answer: they're stupid. Anybody who is even two people, you find two people on the street, that is easy to understand. You know they are actually stupid. Two people are actually fighting on the street, and the police are running up and down trying to stop them, arresting some of them. These are stupid. But when the government fight other government and people really die, like in Sudan, now almost I think 300 people have died. I mean, probably more. I mean, who is counting them? Aeroplanes are flying in the sky, throwing bombs at random on the street. They don't care about people. Who are these kind of people? What kind of human beings are these? I mean, this didn't start today. It has been going on and on and on and on. Unless it changes, there is going to be no rest for the wicked. There will be no peace for the wicked if they continue behaving recklessly. And this is why I know we can solve the problem. We can change the way we think. Be respectful. If you are a Sudanese, if you are actually an Egyptian, or you are an American, why do you shoot people with guns? Somebody rings on your doorbell, they are lost, you shoot them dead. Because your defense is that you're scared of them because they are too tall and they are black. You are white and elderly. You shoot somebody dead. That's your defense. You are scared. What are you scared of? Are you crazy? Completely, we live as total bonkers. Totally insane. We don't even think. And you see this, just today, probably a child is being stabbed to death on the street. Children killing children. They're killing their parents. And parents are also killing children right now in Britain. People are getting mad. This is totally insane. and we can change this by one man at a time. We have to take a stance and say, no, we are humans. Let us change the way we think. I live in the UK. I mean, some people look at a black person and they're convinced these people are animals. Some people don't think I'm a human being if they're white. And some black people also think I'm an animal. Even if they're black, I mean, if you think I'm an animal, then you're a black person, probably you're also an animal. And actually, black people sometimes think white people are animals because of the skin of their color, but we are humans. Black or white, man or woman, child, adult, elderly, young. We are humans. And we have to respect ourselves. And we have to really change the way we live. There is only one way to do it. Respect. Change the way we think about people, about work, about the progress of one sort or another. And the cost of living I've been discussing is an opportunity for us to think and do something with our lives. And nobody should be able to limit themselves. And that is include me. Everything I am telling you behind this camera also involves me. It involves me first. I have to change the way I live. And my neighbors here have to change the way they live. Everybody watching this should change the way they behave. Respect yourself, respect other people. Believe me, if you start thinking respect, you're going to remember. We know how to respect ourselves. We know how to respect other people. We just forget. So we tell ourselves respect every day. We are going to change because if you become aware of swearing, the F word, the S word, the more you become aware about it, the less you're going to commit the offenses of swearing. And swearing is a symptom of bad behavior, but it's not as bad as stabbing somebody with knife and shooting somebody with gun, or refusing to speak to a friend or a family member, or even abusing them in some way. We can change, and we have the right to change, and we will change. Because if we don't, we are extinct. Some people are wishing to death. There is something called death wish. Stop wishing for death. Death will find you out anyway. You're going to grow old in the first place. Why do you waste your time, energy, killing yourself? Don't kill yourself. If you want to kill yourself, kill yourself. But there are people who wish, they want to kill themselves. They want to kill others. There's something called suicide bombers. You have suicide bombers. They bomb themselves and kill others in the process. It's a form of insanity. Don't waste your time killing yourself or killing somebody else. They're going to die anyway. We haven't actually conquered death. We have conquered many things as humans in terms of civilization, but we haven't conquered death. And death is actually upon us, and old age is actually catching up. One way or the other, we're going to die anyway. But we are not really designed to think about death, so let's think about life. Because who knows, maybe next year or in 10, 20 years, 100 years, somebody is going to discover the medicine to treat death, to treat old aging. Find treatment for aging and find treatment for this. This is like you can think. People can do anything. We have achieved so many things as human species, and we have. The level of technology we operate within now is extraordinary. It's like magic. But we may not realize that computer is extraordinary. it's evident that we can succeed as a species, and that's why I'm talking about peace. And I was going to talk about defense in Europe. That's why I will talk about peace, because people think if you have defense system, it's going to be peace. Yes, it's a temporary measure to actually maintain stability and peace. And peace is not as I'm talking about. I'm talking about permanent peace, which is actually a process. It's a progression. We can start the process now, and then going forward, we can build on what we have started. And let us look, to conclude this discussion, let us look briefly on the defense system within the European Union and watch the other videos as well, because I've been talking about the different institutions. Now I'm looking at defense. Defense actually impact on security. There's something called common security as an institutional approach in the European Union, and defense policy. And this defense policy, the institutions, the European Defense Agency, there's something called Frontex, European Union Institute for Security Studies, Security System as an academy, European Union Satellite Center. These are exciting, projects involving a lot of intellect and science and technology. Coat of arms or the military staff. So it's like a government. The military system in Europe and elsewhere is like a government. It's part of the government department anyway. And this actually impact on EU member states and institutions like NATO. And there are other institutions we look at in terms of security and defense. EU members only, perspective NATO member only, perspective EU and NATO member. It's a perspective. The process of the European Union were not devised as a military alliance, because NATO was largely seen as appropriate and sufficient for defense processes. So we were looking at NATO. Now we are looking at defense within the European Union entity in its own right. EU member, 22 EU members are members of NATO, and Sweden is in the process of accessing, while the remaining member states follow policy neutrality. Some of them are neutral, some of them are active. The Western European Union military alliance with a mutual defense clause was disbanded in 2010, and its role had been transferred to the European Union. So there are transformation and reformation within the security infrastructure. Following the Kosovo War in 1999, the European Council agreed that the Union must have the capacity for autonomous action. Like I said, autonomy is like they don't depend on other security infrastructure, and backed by the credible military forces, the means to decide to use them, and the readiness to do so in order to respond to international crises without prejudice to actions by NATO. So to talk about security independence and self-reliance, to that effect, a number of efforts were made to increase the EU military capability, notably the Helsinki 8-line goal process. These are actually events within the European Union strategies and processing. After much discussion, the most concrete result was the EU Battlegrounds Initiative, each of which is planned to be able to deploy quickly about 15,000 personnel, 1,500 personnel, 1,500 personnel. These are actually some of the strategies, the processes. Since the withdrawal of the United Kingdom, France is the only member officially recognized as a nuclear weapon state and the sole holder of a permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council. So, with Britain out of Europe, like we discussed the other day, France now the central pillar providing the essence of the security infrastructure within certain sector, like maybe having a nuclear power in its formal context. France and Italy are also the only European countries, EU countries that have power projection capabilities outside outside of Europe. Italy, Germany, and the Netherlands and Belgium participate in NATO nuclear sharing. Most EU member states oppose the nuclear weapon ban treaty. EU forces have been deployed on peacekeeping missions from Middle East and Northern Africa to the Western Balkans and Western Asia. The European Union military operations are supported by a number of bodies, including the European Defence Agencies, the European Union Satellite Centre, and the European Union Military Staff. The European Union Military Staff is the highest military institution of the European Union, established within the framework of the European Council and follows on from the decision of the Helsinki European Council 10 to 11 in December 1999, which called for the establishment of the permanent political military institutions. The European Union Military Staff is under the authority of the High Representative of the Union of Foreign Affairs and Security Policy and the Political and Security Committee. It directs all military activities in the EU context, including planning and conducting military missions and operations in the framework of the common security and defense policy and the development of military capabilities, and provides the political and security committee with military advice and recommendation on military issues. In an EU consisting of 27 members, substantial security and defense cooperation is increasingly relying on collaboration among all member states. The European Border and Coast Guard agency Frontex is an agency of the European Union aiming to detect and stop illegal immigration, human trafficking, and terrorism infiltration, having since 2015 a stronger role and mandate along with the national authorities for border management. So you're talking about freedom of movement, but also there are risks associated with that within the EU system. The EU also operates the European Travel Information and Authorization System, and Entry-Exit System, the Schengen Information System, the Visa Information System, and the Common European Asylum System, which provide common databases for police and immigration authorities. The impetus for the development of this cooperation was the advent of open borders in the Schengen area and the associated cross-border crime. So you can see the security element of the European Union. We have spoken about the other aspect in the other videos. If you find this topic interesting, and I already pointed to the value of this topic as being consistent with the cost of living as a crisis. Actually, in part, being responsible for it, because it practice capitalism, which is actually a marketized form of capitalism, the extreme version, which is now spreading across the globe, and say that the European Union is actually the driver of the global economic and political system. And so I will be discussing this and relating them to the central theme of what is a global crisis now happening in terms of the cost of living. Thank you for watching this video, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel, to support it, and see you in the next video. Leave a comment below, and share the video if you like it. Click like, and click the notification bell. See you soon. Thank you. Bye bye.